So here we are at Aldershot in Alderstrop. Oh, sorry, I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. Anyway, we are in Adlestrop in Gloucestershire. It's a lovely little village and it's got quite a bit of history. Now the sign that you're seeing in front of you is the sign that originally was in the train station. Obviously Alderstrop no longer has a train station, but that is part of the history of the train station. So where we're going now is up a lovely little road, and up this road is a line of beautiful cottages, and if it wasn't for the modern traffic about, you could honestly say you step back in time. These cottages are absolutely beautiful, and one of them was covered in blossom, and I'm sure I got it on video somewhere, so you might see that up here a bit. Later on we'll be visiting the church, and I'll tell you about that more when we get to the church. Now another thing I have to tell you about, back to the train station actually. Now precisely on the 23rd of June 1914, the express from Paddington stopped briefly at Alderstop station. Now on that train was the poet Edward Thomas. Now he made a few notes while he was there, because he obviously thought that Alderstop was a beautiful place, and he actually wrote a poem about Aldershot, and that was on the bench. If I remember, I did take a film of it, but later on at the end of the film I have some stills, so you'll still see the video on that. And obviously sadly 3 years later he was killed, so that's a nice little thing to remember if you go to visit Aldershot. Now this is what I was telling you about, this lovely little walk up here, and you can see all these beautiful cottages, and it is really like stepping back in time. I said this, if you didn't see the traffic, which you will, well we did, I don't know if I caught it on the film or not, I can't remember, but it was definitely a few cars around, I remember that, and it's just up this road. I will stop for a minute and then I'll put some music in, and you can follow it until we get to the church. Now what you're seeing now is the coach house, which was built in about 1722. You also see in the old vicarage, and the building on the other end is the Adlestrop Manor, if I remember rightly. Now this is the church. I had a bit we had a little bit of trouble getting in, but we got in the end. Now the church is from the 13th century. It's beautiful. It was rebuilt in 1750, and it was also rebuilt in 1764. It went under structural changes in 1824, the 1860s, and also again in the 1920s. So it's under, gone under a lot of changes over the years. But as I said, originally it is a 13th century church. What is interesting now about this is the connection to Jane Austen. Now, the rector of the church was, well, from 1762 until 1813, was a gentleman by the name of Thomas Lee. Now, the Lee family are related to Jane Austen through her mother, whose father was, I can't think of his name offhand. Well, anyway, it's through Jane Austen's mother was a Lee, and her father was born in Adlestrop, and this gentleman, Thomas Lee, the rector, was her cousin. So it was Jane Austen's cousin and also her mum's cousin. So it was like second cousins, whatever, twice, 3 times removed, whatever. Anyway, so in her lifetime, Jane Austen actually visited Thomas Lee at the rectory where she would have stayed at least 3 times. They can say for definite she stayed there, and that was in 1794 when she was 19, again 5 years later in 1799, and finally in 1806, I think she was 31 at the time. They don't know precisely if there's any more dates, but that is what they do know for definite. The family were prolific letter writers, so they were constantly write to each other. So there's a connection to Jane Austen. And what's fascinating about this is that she would have been in that church, in one of the pews, and we can't say where she sat or anything, but it's amazing to think that Jane Austen actually stayed in this amazing little village, and while she was here she went to the church where her cousin was rector. Now the Lee family have a big stand in Aldershot, and I do believe they're still there to this day. Now if you go inside the church, on the wall you will find memorials to the Lee family, and included in Thomas Lee, who was, obviously I was just saying, the rector there, and he was actually the rector there for 51 years, which is absolutely amazing. They're buried in the vault there, so you can imagine there's quite a bit of history with the Lee family. But it always amazes me when you visit this church that this is where Jane Austen actually went, to church. I know some people will say, well, so what? But to me it's fascinating because you're walking in the footsteps of such a famous writer. Okay, so now we're coming around to the side of the church. Well, we're coming around to the side of the church. Now this side of the church was actually rather overgrown. Obviously they're letting wildlife live in here, and there was some quite pretty flowers and all around here. It's well worth a look around because you never know what you're going to see or not see. In a minute we'll be going inside the church, and I said inside the church you'll see a beautiful font. You will see some beautiful stained glass windows, I should say. Hopefully I did get on camera the Lee memorials, because they were well worth a look at, and it's a beautiful sort of church inside and out. Yes, I did actually all around the church, which is really good. Also at the end of the film you will see a selection of photos that I took, and they're well worth looking at as well, because I've got the carvings from outside the church, and so please have a look at them, stay around, have a look at them I should say, and enjoy the rest of the video. And until next time, Thank you for watching.